When I think of pleasure, it's an embodied sensation. And Beltane really asks us to come into our bodies, our ripening bodies. No matter where you are in your life cycle, there's a ripening at this time of year. And it's easy to get caught up in the busyness of it all. And so pleasure is a really beautiful way to anchor back down into our bodies. It's not indulgence, it's attunement. It's how we know that we're alive and we're aligned. And like, what is the point of life if not to experience pleasure, right? How can you weave a little more pleasure into your life this season? Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast, your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hello, Woo Crew, and welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I'm here today with a solo episode all about Beltane, sometimes called Beltane, if you're speaking it with an Irish flair or an Irish accent. I'll probably flip-flop back and forth between the two, so bear with me. And of course, as with so many of these festivals, so many of these words, there are different spellings, different pronunciations, depending on if you're in Ireland or Scotland. It's variable. That being said, they're all referring to the same moment of the year, the same turning of the wheel, the fire festival, the celebration of Beltaine. Before I drop into what Beltaine feels like and what this moment in the wheel represents, if it's safe for you to do so, I'd love for you to pause and close your eyes. If you're driving, please don't. Please don't. If you're walking, maybe you slow down and you soften your gaze a little bit. Just tune in to your body and to the world around you. Can you feel the shift that's happening? The light is staying longer. The air is warmer. There are more varied bird songs to be heard as the birds return. Something in your body might be waking up along with the earth, whether or not you've named it, whether or not you've recognized it. This energy of rising sap and blooming flowers and singing birds, this is Beltane. And because turning and moving with the wheel of the year is so potent, I wanted to make sure we dropped in our bodies to this time. Because we can engage with the wheel cerebrally and find benefit and find wisdom and find understanding. But it's so much more potent when we can drop in to the wheel and the turnings in our bodies. And that's part of why ceremony and gathering together is so powerful, and I'll speak a little bit more to that later. But for now, let's talk about Beltane. What is Beltane? So, Beltane is an ancient Celtic fire festival. So the fire festivals, or cross-quarter days, as you may already know if you've been with me here for a while, are those midway points between the solstices and the equinoxes, they are the big celebrations in the Celtic Wheel of the year. They're the celebrations that we know that the ancient Celts were for sure celebrating. They were marking these moments. Unlike with the solstices and the equinox, which we suspect they were aware of, they were maybe marking them, the monuments and the like that we have that capture the light on those days, the solstices and the equinoxes, those are actually pre-Celtic on the islands of Ireland and Scotland. So we're not totally sure how the Celts may have celebrated the solstices and the equinoxes, but we do have some pretty ancient evidence of them celebrating the 4 fire festivals or cross-quarter days, which are Samhain, marking the entry to the dark half of the year and winter, Imbolc, marking Bridget's return, the returning the light, the spring arriving, that liminal time of Imbolc as we transition towards Beltaine or Beltane, which is the beginning of the light half of the year, the masculine energy, the yang energy, if you're in Chinese medicine, the summer, the ripening, and then we have Lunasa, and that's the entry into the liminal period that is autumn, the shift from the light half to the dark half. So Beltaine was first mentioned in writing in Ireland in 908 AD. So we know that it's been practiced for a lot longer than that because the Celtic tradition was primarily an oral tradition. So it's an ancient lived tradition. It is, as I mentioned, a fire festival. And in my research and reading, it might have been named for Bel, the fire god of the Gauls, or it might have come from Tina for fire and Baal, a Celtic god named Belanus, sometimes known as the Shining One. It's interesting because Lu for Lunasa is also often referred to as the Shining One. I didn't dig any deeper at this point, but there might be some interesting parallels there. And like all Celtic fire festivals, it is a time of celebration, of community coming together. Big bonfires would have been lit. In this case, the tradition was to light 2 big bonfires, and people would walk between the fires as a form of purification or seining. They would drive cattle through the fires as a form of, again, purification, safeguarding them, seining, cleaning, clearing. Some of the evidence points to a similar tradition that happens at other fire festivals where all of the hearth fires in the community might be allowed to go out on Beltane Eve and then be relit with brands from the communal bonfire, again, tying the community together. Beltaine is a very liminal time of the year, much like Samhain. It was believed that the veil between the worlds was maybe a little thinner than usual. It's hard to know because in the Celtic worldview, the other world is laid right on top of this world, and you can go wandering into it at any time. There are, thin places of mist or fog, fairy mounds. There's a lot more connection and communication between the other world and our world in the ancient Celtic world. But if kind of some of the writing and the information we have is to be believed, this time of year was particularly thin. It was a time when, unlike a Samhain, when we think about the ancestors crossing over and connecting more easily, among other things, but primarily it's ancestors that we talk about at Samhain. At Beltaine, it's the fae, the fair folk, the fairy folk. And they were not necessarily up to things that humans would perceive to be good. The morality of the fae folk is very different than human folk. And so often their behaviors or their antics were perceived as mischievous. And so offerings to the fae would be made. It was a liminal time. You may or may not have wanted to be outside after dark, probably not. It's a portal, right, between 2 seasons, between the dark half of the year and the light half of the year. And so as with any portal, the shift, the change, there can be good things stepping through, but there can also be danger at this time. And so a lot of the ceremony and celebration was around both purification and celebration and protection. Lots of protection stuff going on. Beltane is also this moment where the earth and the green man come together in sacred union. The sap is rising, the earth is starting to bear fruit in the form of greening up, and the flowers are bursting. It's a very sensual time, and it would have been common, again, pre-Christian, for couples to bless the fields. Hand fasting for a year and a day was very common at this time of year, and children born through unions that occurred at Beltane, so they'd be born around Imbolc if they were carried to term, they would be considered to belong to the goddess. So there's all sorts of kind of stuff going on here. And when the Christians came in and started to convert the people and often take on some of their traditions and, try to shift their celebrations towards something a little more Christian, we got this like really sensual, sexy kind of celebration turned into like a virginal pageant, right? The May Day pageants were the Christian church's response, the Puritan response to the mischief and the sexuality of Beltane. One of my favorite traditions of Beltane is the tradition of stepping outside at sunrise or just before sunrise and of washing your face with the morning dew. And traditionally through Ireland and Scotland and most of the Celtic worlds, this was practiced sometimes just on Beltane morning, which is May 1st in our modern calendar. If we're looking at different calendars, and I spoke about this when I was talking about Imbolc, we could look at the Coligny calendar, which is a lunar calendar that was likely followed by the ancient Celts. In that case, we might be looking at the new moon, I believe, from that calendar that falls closest to this time, which this year would be May 16th. We might be looking at the astrological actual midpoint between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. That would be May 5th this year. And we might also be looking at the full moon closest to this point, which this year would be May 1st. So there's all sorts of different dates, just like with Imbolc, just like with Samhain, like all of these Celtic fire festivals, because they had the sun and the moon to tell time by, they didn't have the Gregorian calendar. This date of May 1st is a later invention, and it works. If it works for us, if it works for you, awesome. Celebrate on that day. But if it doesn't feel quite right, then play with the other dates, right? Just like Imbolc, it doesn't have to be hard and fast on a specific day. Think of it more of a time of year. And so at this time of year, through the month of May, sometimes into June, we have so much history and evidence of women going out into the fields in the morning, either just before or right at sunrise, not after, collecting the morning dew, and either collecting it on their hands and patting it on their face directly, allowing the sun to dry it, or actually collecting it into bottles. So either with their hands into bottles or with clean linen laid out to collect it, wrung into bottles. And the belief, and this was practiced right up through the 1980s, there's lots of people still went out and did this. The belief was that it was protective, it was healing, and it was beautifying. And so this is something that I learned a few years ago. I love to practice it. I do it all through summer. It feels so good. And I was recently reading a book called To Speak for the Trees by Diana Beresford Kroger. And she's a Celtic woman, an Irish woman who now lives in Canada. And she's a scientist. And she learned this practice of going out to collect the morning dew on Beltane for her community. The people who taught her and passed down their traditions specifically were collecting it from the clover and the bright yellow flowers on the clover. And it was said to heal and beautify. And when she looked into the science, so cool, she confirmed, I'm going to just quote from her book, "Later in life, I would confirm that Trifolium dibium, which is the shamrock, does contain a biochemical for beauty. The upper area of the shamrock leaf exudes a pair of related flavonoids, most commonly found in citrus fruits. The morning dew holds these beneficial chemicals in solution, and when applied to the face, they encourage blood flow while gently tightening the skin's surface. How cool is that? So it does feel like it's tightening when we place it on. I'd be really curious to know how many other plants also carry these flavonoids, because in the traditions, some of it say it's from the hawthorn that you want to collect your dew. Some say it's from the corn. Some say that it's from the wheat. Grass works, but it's not preferable. And so it would be really interesting to look into the science of that. I'm not going to share any more about the history, the tradition of Beltaine right now. If you choose to join me in ceremony on Thursday evening, April 30th, it is online and in person. It's hybrid. Then I'll be sharing more about some of the mythology and the traditions and the history. And you can, of course, if it's after April 30th already, when you're listening to this, you can always grab the replay. I have several women who join every ceremony, but Thursday evenings just don't work in their world. And so they typically will watch the replay at some time in the following few days. And as we just chatted about, the exact date is not super important. So it's there for you if you want to learn a little bit more from me. Of course, you can do your own research too. There's lots of info out there. But I want to drop into a little bit of the energetics of Beltaine. And as I mentioned, pleasure is one of them. There's this sense of passion, of pleasure, and this is the teaching we want to drop into here. So it's not just a time of biological fertility. It's also a time of creative fertility. It's the summer months, right? And we talk about the seasonal energetics. Summer is in our bodies. If you're in a menstruating, cycling body, summer is ovulation. Summer is bright and connective, and it's the mother in our maiden mother crone matriarch foursome. It's not a trio. I don't know how to say the other one. Quattro. Carmen Spagnola says, at its heart, Beltaine is a fertility festival that celebrates the marriage of our deliberate intention with visionary action. So it's this time of passion. It's the direction of south, the element of fire. It's about focus and inspiration. And this is a really lovely energy to harness, especially as we're finally entering the light half of the year. I don't know about you, but it can be a really destabilizing transition to go from the dark and the calm and the quiet of winter to the kind of tumultuousness of spring, and then finally coming towards summer energy. It's not going to feel like full summer for me where I live for a little while yet, but the hint of it is there. And where you are, I just came back from the West Coast. So if you're on the West Coast of Canada somewhere, I was in Victoria, it was gorgeous, and the flowers are blooming and the trees are leafing out and the birds are singing, and it was getting really warm. And so it might feel fully like summer for you already. But I want to talk a little bit about the pleasure piece of Beltaine, because pleasure can feel like a dirty word. I actually have whole episodes, I think more than one, definitely one I did with Ellie, my former co-host, right near the beginning of this podcast, about pleasure and sensuality. I think I've spoken to it since then, potentially at Beltane last year. But pleasure is something that can feel like a dirty word. It can feel shameful, it can feel selfish, it can feel performative. There's so many stories we have about pleasure. And so as I speak this word even, I'd love for you to take another little pause and tune in and notice what happens in your body when I say the word pleasure. Is there constriction? Is there a softening? Is there withdrawal? Is there nervousness, fear, excitement? What's there for you? And when I say pleasure, what do you think about? Because for so many of us, when we talk about pleasure and women's pleasure, we immediately go to sexual pleasure, which is great. It's pleasurable. Sex is for many of us a very pleasurable act. We hope it is. It's intended to be. A lot of us, it's not. And that's okay too. But pleasure is so much more than just sex. That is part of what we can mean by pleasure, but it's so much more than that, right? It is the taste of your morning coffee, if you're a coffee drinker. It is the sunshine on your face after it's been raining for a week. It's the coziness of your bed or the softness of a silky nightie against your skin. It's anything that brings us that sense of pleasure, satisfaction, joy. Like, it's very sensory. I'm not sure, actually, as I speak this, that we can have just pure intellectual pleasure. Maybe if you like debating or a really good intellectual discussion, that can be pleasurable. But when I think of pleasure, it's an embodied sensation. And Beltane really asks us to come into our bodies, our ripening bodies. No matter where you are in your life cycle, there's a ripening at this time of year. And it's easy to get caught up in the busyness of it all. And so pleasure is a really beautiful way to anchor back down into our bodies. It's not indulgence. It's attunement. It's how we know that we're alive and we're aligned. And what is the point of life if not to experience pleasure, right? How can you weave a little more pleasure into your life this season? That's a question that I would invite you to take to your journal, to your morning walk, to your meditation. What brings you pleasure outside of sexual pleasure? And it's great if that is one of the places you find pleasure. Have lots of it, do more of it, enjoy it. But what brings you pleasure outside of that space? And how can you weave more of it in? Can you allow yourself the luxury of pleasure? Again, get into your senses. This can be small. This doesn't need to be you adding a whole bunch of pleasure experiences to your life. It can be, if you have the time for it, amazing. You can create some time for it, amazing. But it can also just be as simple as noticing where the pleasure already exists. Again, in your morning cup of coffee, in the way the sunlight feels on your face, in the way your bed feels so damn good when you get into it at the end of the night, or maybe you spend a couple extra breaths stretching and luxuriating when your alarm goes off in the morning. That's my invitation to you to work with for this turn of the wheel for Beltane, this pleasure. A few other ways that you could celebrate Beltane are to wake early on Beltane morning and step outside and collect some of that dew off the grass or the flowers or the plants, whatever's nearby, and pat it onto your face. And lift your face to the sun if it's sunny. If it's not, if it's raining, it's going to be tricky to do. But then the beauty again of this celebration is it's not tied to May 1st. So maybe you rise on May 1st and go out, but maybe it's raining. And so you've got May 2nd and 3rd and 4th and all the way through to May 16th and beyond if needed. But that whole kind of window. And maybe you turn this into a morning ritual where you step outside any morning that it's not raining to collect the dew. You can step outside anyways and just let it rain on your face. But on the days where there's dew, stepping outside, turning that into a morning ritual of pleasure, right? Feel how good that feels to put the cool morning dew on your face and let it dry as the sun rises. You might practice a little mini Beltane ritual for yourself if you're not able to join us for the ceremony, or you decide that you don't want to grab that replay, and you could light a candle, sit facing south, gaze softly at the flames, let yourself drift, let the flame dance in your vision, and ask what you're being called toward this season. What wants to be born? And take some time journaling. And maybe you do both of these things and you also choose to celebrate by decorating your space. This is a beautiful time of year to bring in fresh flowers, greenery, hawthorn if you can find some, any spring flowers that call to you, making your home inside feel like the season that we are entering into on the outside. Like all of the Wheel of the Year ceremonies, or celebrations rather, it's a communal festival at its heart, right? The bonfires weren't lit alone. The dancing wasn't done in isolation. There is something so powerful when women come together at these threshold moments. Something that simply cannot happen alone. So much of our healing journeys, we're retreating inwards, we're doing these solo rituals and practices, and they're all really beautiful, and they can only take us so far, because at the end of the day, what we are all craving and seeking is connection. And part of that connection needs to be to each other. So if you have a desire to step into this season in the company of other women, and we can connect, whether or not we're in real time, but I definitely think it's more powerful when we get to be in real time, to come together, to light a fire, a candle, to do the deeper work of sitting with the energies of the four directions. That's always part of our ceremonies, to speak your passions and your pleasures aloud in a circle, to be witnessed in claiming them. That's brave work. And Beltane is often one of the most powerful ceremonies of the year because of this focus, this topic of passion and pleasure. I would love to have you come and join us for the Beltane ceremony. As I mentioned, it's happening on April 30th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 7:15 if you're coming online, 7 if you're in Calgary and coming in person. It will be recorded, so if you aren't able to join us live, that ceremony recording will go out for you. You'll still be able to sit in the energy, to be guided through the history, the mythology, and the ceremonial piece, which is tuning in, working with the energies of the four directions, the four seasons, releasing, reflecting, calling in, intention setting, and connecting with ourselves, the earth, and each other. However you're choosing to mark this season, I do hope that it's with community and with fire and with joy, and I hope it feels like a coming alive. As always, I would love to hear how this episode resonated for you. Don't hesitate to reach out. Send me a message over on Instagram at @IamEileenMarch. Leave a comment on Spotify or YouTube. Send me an email, eileen@myluminouslife.ca. And I hope that I will see you at our ceremony together this Thursday. And if not, there's always the next turn of the wheel as well. As always, thank you so much for listening. If you like this episode, please leave a rating, a review, subscribe. It helps ever so much, and share with a friend. That's all for today. Bye for now.